between you and the resident. Finally, defamation of character is a legal standard I want to share with you. It's a fancy way of saying you cannot injure or harm the name or reputation of another person. You would do this by false or malicious statements to a third party. There are two types. One type of defamation of character is libel, the other is slander. In short, libel is written, slander is spoken. So keep that in mind, that's the difference. Let me talk about libel and give you some examples, and then I'll take you through slander. Libel is an unfavorable picture or unfavorable written words about another person. Negative comments about a coworker, for example, in the communication logs. And I usually say if you're using an adjective to describe something, you perhaps are going beyond just stating the facts. Could be perceived as libel. It's okay to factually state information like what you've observed in a document like the communications log, but if you're assigning judgment, it's inappropriate and can be construed as libel. In contrast to the written word or libel is slander, which is spoken. Slander in its common form is gossip or venting. It's important that you take the high road and avoid participating in this type of interaction. It's okay to say to someone, I'm not comfortable with you talking about this or so-and-so. By approaching other people in this way, you are refraining from putting the other person on the defense, but you're also sending a clear message that it's not okay, and you're showing what your personal ethics are. Speaking of ethics, let's talk about that. Ethical standards are also known as the code of conduct. Ethical standards involve keeping promises and doing what you should do, and acting in accordance to the rules and standards for right conduct or practice. It's doing what you ought to do because it is right and consistent with good and moral conduct. An example I like to talk with healthcare workers about is tipping or gifts. Although your facility most probably has policies and procedures around this, the giving of gifts by a client or by a resident, you should know that you cannot accept them. Ask your supervisor if you're unsure how to handle such a situation. But we are asked at times to follow our personal ethics, and also ethics can be outlined within your facility's policies or procedures. So think about your ethics in your daily work. It is your responsibility to make sure that a resident's rights are maintained and that others are providing care reasonably. It's your ethical responsibility. Now, it can be uncomfortable if you observe, for example, another nursing assistant doing something to bring it forward. But remember why you do what you do. It's for your patients and for your residents. So it's your obligation to consider this as part of your job. Some ground rules to keep in mind, though, when you're bringing something forward. First, be extremely certain of what you witnessed. Second, be prepared to factually and specifically communicate what you observed. So those two things are really important. And then take the situation to someone who can act on it immediately. Often this is your supervisor or it's your nurse in charge during your specific shift. Abuse and the reporting of abuse is key. It's your legal and ethical responsibility to report abuse if you suspect or observe it. Keep in mind that you can be held responsible if you choose not to report it. File a complaint. Complaints should be first directed to individuals designated within the facility to review the situation. This is spelled out in the facility's complaint procedure. You can oftentimes get this from your supervisor or your human resources area. Most complaints are likely to be resolved in-house by coming to a mutual resolution. if the complaint cannot be resolved at the facility level, a grievance can be filed with the appropriate state agency. Know this. This may be an ombudsman, and contact information is usually posted at entrances to facilities, as well as other places like break rooms or staff lounges. I can't press enough, however, it's to everyone's best interest that if you have concerns, first take it to your supervisor and try to work it out. They, like you, have the bottom line at heart, and that is your patient's care. Patient's care is managed by the state through a survey process. And the survey, if you think about it, is a good thing because it does commit every facility to the following of policies and procedures and to the following of quality standards of care. The survey is a process by which a facility is evaluated, studied, inspected, examined, and reviewed with regard to the care it provides to its residents and patients. Now, who does this? Because I did mention the state. In the case of an on-site survey, members of a state agency like the Department of Health and Human Services will visit your facility, again, like I said, to determine the quality of care given to your patients or your residents. Now, the purpose is not to catch you. It's doing something you shouldn't be doing, but it's to verify that the standards of care are being met. It's a means of making sure that there is continuity of care, that what is being done is best for you and your patient. If you've never seen the process, let me just briefly take you through that. It's conducted by surveyors or inspectors, and what their jobs are, first of all, to observe and interview residents and staff. And they'll talk to residents and staff. Secondly, to review paperwork and documentation. Make sure that things are being documented and done, again, to make sure that there's continuity and consistency of care. Also to inspect physical surroundings. And then finally, to observe the interaction of staff and residents. So those four things are key to the survey process. Your role, because it can be stressful when survey time comes around. But you should know, if you're doing it on a daily basis, you're doing it right. And your job is to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, you're following correct patient care procedures. For example, if you protect a resident's privacy, you are doing just what the surveyors are looking for. Reporting concerns or observations about a resident or patient to the charge nurse immediately is exactly what quality care is all about. So again, your role on a day-to-day basis to make sure that you're doing that. Understanding the care plan, which is a plan of care for every resident or patient, is important for you to be able to do your job. So if you're wondering what can you do day to day, also understand and follow your patient's care plans. Know what you are to do and why you are to do it. If you're not sure why, ask. If there's an exception to care on a given day, be sure to document that information. For example, if a patient refuses a bath, document. That is what is key. Documentation, speaking of, is your day-to-day responsibility. Don't only document care, but things that you see, observations you have. The assumption is, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And finally, follow the golden rule. Treat patients, residents, clients as you would be like to be treated. Doing that is one of the best ways to preserve resident patients, clients' rights.